Hey everyone, we are picking up this Magirus project right where we left off, because in the last video we took it out to an inspection and we found that there's only a few little things holding this back from being street legal. So let's go right ahead and do something about that. But before we do, there is just something we have to settle. Because in the last video with this truck, I asked you guys to guess how heavy this thing is. Because I went out to get it weighed, so I have the results right here. And once again, I am very impressed with you guys watching along. You keep showing me that it really is the right crowd that is watching these videos, because most of the guesses were actually in the ballpark. Even the very first guess that came in was just 20 kilos off. And I should just say that this is actually rounded to the nearest hundred, so if we do the same with your guesses, several of you were spot on and many of you were really close. It weighed in at 6.7 tons. Which is actually a little bit less than I personally guessed, which is a good thing because that means I have that much more load capacity. So I can load 4.3 tons on the back of this thing. And on top of that, I can even add an 11-ton trailer to this, bringing the total weight up to 22 tons. But whether or not this 170 horsepower engine is going to be able to pull 22 tons, I have my doubts, but I also don't think we're going to find out anytime soon anyway. Now, let's get this inside and get going. Alrighty, so I think we're going to go ahead and start with what is hopefully going to be the easiest project, which is to replace this mirror up here. So the only one of these three mirrors I was able to keep is that one up there. The other two were either broken or missing, I don't really remember, but they've been replaced. But that one I was able to just straighten up and put back in place. But because it is that old mirror, that also means that it's no longer the correct type. The one that is supposed to be in that position should have a little more curvature to it, giving you a wider field of view. It's just something I didn't even think about back when I did the mirrors, but it's actually supposed to be one just like what I put over here. So we're just going to go ahead and replace that. And luckily I already got one of those mirrors. This is just one that was taken off a vehicle that was going for scrap, so I didn't even have to pay anything for this. But I'm not sure it's going to fit right onto the mount up there, but we're just going to have to see. So let's get this thing out of the way. Yeah. That's kind of what I thought. It's going to hit the other mirror here. I think I might have to add an extra pin that this can be mounted on. Yeah. Well, there we go. We got the new mirror mounted up on there. The mount ended up looking a little bit weird, but that's okay. It suits the owner, I guess. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really see the big difference between this mirror and the other one that was on there. But now we've done what they asked, so hopefully they're gonna be happy with that. So let's just move right on to the next issue we had, which was that rubber boot on the steering ball joint over there. So I'm gonna want the axle up off the ground for this. Alright, so this is it. The rubber boot on the steering ball joint over here on the driver's side. That's the one he showed me and wrote up that had to be replaced. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. But check out what I just noticed as I was jacking this up. The boot on the ball joint over here on the passenger side, that's also really bad. Might even be worse than the other one. But somehow he didn't catch that at the inspection, so I guess we are equally blind. But I'm just gonna be replacing both of them. Might actually be able to do this without even taking the wheels off. Yeah, I got plenty of room for this. I was gonna say hopefully they're not gonna be really badly stuck, but I'm not gonna get my hopes up. That was easy. Now this trick doesn't always work on these big ball joints, but let's give it a go. No, I think I'm gonna end up breaking something. I'm gonna need a proper tool. Well, this thing is really meant for slightly bigger vehicles, but let's see if it'll hold on here. Yeah, this whole steering arm is sort of rounded off, so it's not super easy to get something on there. Let's just try this one. Yeah, this might actually work. Just a little bit concerned it might mess up the thread because this is going to push right on that. But we should be able to deal with that if that's the case. Let's just give this one a try. Things are just a bit of a weird size on this truck because it's sort of a medium truck. So the small tools won't fit and the big tools are a little bit too big. Let's see what this does. Aha! Cool. I didn't have to press too hard, so hopefully we didn't kill the threads on this. Yep, this one is pretty much done. And this is on the passenger side. This is the one they didn't even notice at the inspection. There we go. Got a new thingy for it here. Kind of fits. Yeah. And I just gotta get this doohickey on here. Last time I did that, it was a real pain. Let's see how this goes. I think we got it. That was relatively easy. Now, just the top ring here. Ugh, everything is greasy now. Doesn't really help. Just realized maybe I should have put this top ring on first. I don't really want to take that off again, but let's just do it. Get this thing on here. Yeah, that is the way to do it. Now I just gotta get this on for the third time. It gets more and more greasy. I don't have grip on anything. Oh, not quite. And it's off again. This would drive anyone mad. There we go. Finally. Now we just got one more to go. Alright, so after a lot more struggling, I got the other one on here as well. So we're ready to put this thing back in place. Well, that is the steering sorted out, which means the last thing we have to take care of is this enormous roller wire guide that is sticking out the front here. This thing is just way too big and bulky to be road legal. Because this whole thing is what they in legal terms refer to as a sharp corner, which basically describes any kind of solid, sharp angled thing that is sticking out from the vehicle. So the solution that was suggested to me from the guys at the inspection center was that I could go and build some kind of box or cover that I could put on top of this, something that would shield it off and also sort of round out the whole shape of this thing. They would approve something like that. But I have been thinking about it quite a bit, and I don't think I'm gonna go that route. Because no matter how I envision it in my head with that box cover thing on here, it's just not going to look very good. And I also think it's going to be a bit of a hassle to deal with. So I'm thinking what I will do instead is get rid of this entire enormous wire guide that is on here, because I really don't see a need for this thing to be this big. So instead, I'm going to build a small version that can be right in this little hole in the front bumper. That should make everything out here nice and flush. And it really should not compromise the winch in any way. I have only ever seen these enormous wire rollers on these old Magirus trucks. Any other big off-road vehicle that has a big winch built into it, they just have simple little 4-roller guides out in the front, and some don't even have rollers. They just have like a little funnel-shaped thing coming out the front. The way I see it, the only reason this thing is so big is because it has these really big rollers in here, so it needs an enormous housing just to have that. And because those are shaped to sort of guide the wire along them, the whole thing needs to be able to tilt and rotate as well, so it has to be in this swivel mount back here. And the only advantage I see to these big rollers in here is that you can get a relatively smooth curve on the wire if you want to pull at like 90 degrees. But that is really not something you should be doing, and besides, someone already did, and it turned out it wasn't a great idea. Because this thing is so long from where it is attached, it's actually been bent relative to the truck, despite being so solid and massive. Oh yeah, and other than being bent, this lower roller is also completely seized up, although that could be fixed, but it's still something I would have to do. But the point I'm trying to make is that I'm not terribly sorry about getting rid of this enormous thing and just make a nice little compact roller lead in here instead. I'm just going to go ahead and get this bumper off so we can see what we got to work with. Actually, it looks like it's going to be pretty easy to just take out this center bit right here. Alright, so this whole thing is just one big lump that is very solidly bolted onto the whole corner of the chassis right here. You know, maybe I could go ahead and reuse this whole rear part of it. That way I would already have the mounting bit. I would only have to build the roller part of it. We might just do that. You know, I just realized something. This cable is not going to fit through any of this. If I want to get this out, I have to unwind the whole thing, all the way down to the other end and all the way back to the drum and everything on the drum to get to the end of the cable, because this thing is not going through any of that. I'd rather not do that. That's a lot of work. You know what? If I'm reusing the rear part of this mount anyway, that means I'm gonna ruin this no matter what. So I might just go and cut this thing so I can get the cable out. Yeah, I'm doing that. Now that I'm gonna be cutting into this thing anyway, I just thought of something. I'm gonna need some rollers in here. But I already have a couple of rollers right here. If I split these things right down the middle, I got the 4 rollers I need right here. I mean, if they were good enough out here, they're certainly going to be good enough in there. Well, I gotta hand it to them. They put quite a lot of effort into engineering this relatively simple object, but I suppose that is a pretty classic German thing to do. It even has needle bearings in here and brass washers for the whole rotating assembly, and it's all pretty well made. So yeah, it is a bit of a shame that I have to get rid of all this stuff, but on the other hand, I'm really not too upset about getting rid of this enormous lump that was hanging out the front of the truck. It did look kind of weird in itself. And also, it's still going to be much better than that huge box that they suggested I put on here. So if this is what it takes to make it street legal, I'm fine with that. Now, as I mentioned previously, I can't get this cable out of these last few parts, so I am just going to have to split these down the middle. This part I'm not too concerned about. That is probably just going in the scrap. But this one, I do want to use the rear part of this, so I'm probably just going to cut the top off this tube right here. This is all some thick stuff. It's going to be a lot of cutting. I was thinking about using the plasma cutter to split this, but I really don't want to damage this cable, so I'm going to take it nice and easy with just some regular cut discs. Alright, check it out. This is what I've come up with. This is a lot more compact than the thing that was on there before. Look at that. It's barely sticking out any further than these steps out here. There is no way they can go and complain about this. Now, at first I was just going to make a very simple square roller setup here, but somewhere along the line I sort of changed my plans a little bit because I realized I was going to have to weld around this winch cable. But then I got the idea, what if I make it so that you can open up the top of this thing? So the two vertical rollers here, they are held together by this top plate that comes out along with the bolts. And you can take out the bolt for the other top roller in there. Get that back in place. There we go. And now the whole thing is open in the top, so we can get our cable in and out like that. That means that now if I for some reason have to get in here and work on something and have to take this whole thing off, I won't have to take the entire winch cable off. I can just open it up like that. I think that's going to be pretty handy. But yeah, because I made those changes, that also means that these rollers are not quite long enough anymore. So I'm just going to put some spacers in here for now. I might go and make some new rollers on the lathe someday, but not right now. This whole thing is just held together with a few tack welds right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and do full welds on everything and also add some extra little cross bracing and stuff like that. And we'll give it a bit of paint and we should be done. Oh yeah, this front hatch, it does clear just fine. Don't worry, I did check that. But there we go. I'm actually really happy with how this thing turned out, especially given how quickly I built this. And honestly, I think this does look better than having that enormous thing hanging out the front of the truck. And it definitely looks better than putting a big box over the whole thing. Now I can also go and get this cable wound up much tighter, but I was just thinking, rather than doing that, we can't just go and build something like that without testing it. So let's go out and winch something. Well, I'm gonna need something a little bit heavy to pull, so let's use this. Oh dear, my Humvee is very stuck. How will I ever get it out of here? I purposely parked it a little bit at an angle here so it'll put some pressure on those side rollers as well. Right, let's give this a try. Put the PTO on, release the clutch, and we're gonna start bringing it in. Well, I've seen enough and I'm confident that this is going to work just fine. The only thing that's left to do in that regard is to modify this tool right here. This is what holds the end of the cable out here in the front when you are using the winch out the back of the truck. Obviously that is not going to fit anymore now that I modified this whole thing, so I'm going to have to rework that to fit over this somehow. But that's really not a priority right now. What is a priority is to get this thing back out to the inspection center and see if we can finally get it to pass. So I'm gonna do the same as last time. I'm gonna bring this with me to work tomorrow morning, and then later in the day I will go to the inspection center. We did it! I got me some shiny metal signs that says Ed on them, but that means that this thing is finally legal to take back out on the road. So let's go right ahead and get these on there and make it official. Well, we already know where the rear one is going to go, and I'm thinking since we're missing a logo here anyway, I might just put this right here. Yeah, that'll work. So here we are, it all finally worked out. I honestly wasn't sure we would get to this point back when I bought this vehicle, given the lack of paperwork. Because with the way our system works here, documentation is everything. So it really was a bit of a gamble getting into this truck without it. So I am very pleased that it was possible to get all of this worked out. And I just want to give a big thanks to everyone who helped to get to this point. And also all those of you who have sent me all sorts of information and data. It really has been a big help. Now there's still a bunch of things that I want to do and need to do to this truck, but at least now I can actually start using it. But I'm gonna end this video here, so thank you all for watching along, and I'll see you in the next one.